Welcome back to the Confessions of a Good Girl podcast, where we get to redefine what it means to be good and a girl. Today, we're actually going to start our conversation on overload, the second principle of my signature confess method. Overload builds directly on the awareness that we just unlocked when we went through conditioning, and it operates on the premise that the nervous system was never actually broken. It was actually really brilliant, because before you had the language for what was happening around you, your body created adaptive responses to keep you alive, to keep you feeling loved, to keep you feeling safe. The work here is really about understanding the how behind your patterns and not shaming and blaming them. If you want to follow along and do the work, you can grab the Confess Method, the complete self-coaching system, from the link in the show notes. But let's get into today, because I want to share with you the ways overload might be showing up in your life right now. Because if you're anything like the women I work with, the women I built the Confess Method for, you're probably calling all of these by the wrong name, and you have been for a really long time. We are going to talk about 3 of the stress responses: fight, freeze, and fawn, because these are the ones I see showing up most in good girls. You're probably wondering right now, where is flight? Like, are we going to talk about that? And well, yes, flight is actually going to get its own moment because it's the most praised and most disguised. So we'll come back to that in another episode. But as we move through the other 3 phases, I want you to listen to which one makes your body do something. Which one can you feel is like a bodily response? So pay attention. First up is freeze. And let's be clear, freeze isn't laziness. Freeze is your nervous system pulling the emergency brake because something has failed. Freeze can look like scrolling for hours on content you don't even like. We're talking doom scroll here. It can look like sitting in your car in the driveway because you can't make yourself actually walk into the house. Knowing that the dishes need to be done and physically not being able to make your body move to go do it. Going to bed at 8 p.m., not because you're tired, but because being awake feels too loud. My favorite old response is just sitting in the recliner. I'll just rest here for a minute, and then that becomes 3 hours later. For my clients, this often looks like building a beautiful life on the outside. You have the marriage, the kids, the home, and maybe even the career, and then you realize it's just off. You just don't feel any of it. She's going through the motions like you're fine, you're grateful, and there's this quiet numbness underneath everything that you've been calling depression or just a season. This is exactly how freeze showed up for me. I've shared this before, how back in 2022, I was sitting in my recliner, doom scrolling, numbing out with Supernatural on in the background, my husband playing video games, my son playing with one of his 5,000 toys, and I was just numbing because I was showing up so hard for everyone else in every other area of my life that I completely disregarded what was actually happening to me and what would actually help me feel better. And I was in that space for so long. Even when I was doing all of these things to change my life, the next time that life swung back on me and something happened, I immediately went back into that response, and I found myself in this collapsed state where I couldn't even get out of bed anymore. I was barely surviving. And this is what happens when you've been overriding yourself for too long. Your body just finally stops cooperating. So hearing this, I want you to consider, what's a moment where you froze, where you were completely in freeze and you didn't even know it? And what were you actually disassociating from in that moment? So next up is fight. And fight for good girls almost never looks like the obvious version. We don't yell. We were actually trained not to do that. So our fight goes underground. Our fight can look a lot more like you snap at your husband over the dishwasher, but it wasn't actually the dishwasher that pissed you off. The cold tone with your kids that you hated yourself for the second that it left your mouth. The passive aggressive text, the slamming cabinets, the eye roll, the I'm fine, when that's actually a warning shot. And for my clients, this often looks like the woman who says she's the calm one, the rock, the one who never loses it until she does, and it scares even her. She apologizes for her tone. She replays every moment of the day. She tells herself that she's a bad wife or a bad mom because of how she reacted. She doesn't realize fight only shows up because she's been suppressing it for weeks, months, and maybe even years. Fight is a response that finally broke through when you've been swallowing yourself for far too long. So what moment are you still feeling shame about where you showed up in that fight response, and what was actually underneath it? Lastly, let's get into Fawn. Fawn deserves the most airtime because it's the one most of us probably live in and don't even recognize it. Fawn can look like the yes you said when every single cell in your body was screaming no. It's laughing at a joke that maybe actually hurt you. It's apologizing when someone bumps into you, or even worse, if you're like me, apologizing to the couch for bumping into it. Like, what? Saying no worries when there are in fact worries to be had. Being the friend who holds everyone else's pain and never naming your own. And performing as someone who is low maintenance. Performing as easy. Performing as I'm fine. For my clients, this often looks like you're the one that's being called strong, the easy one, the dependable one, your whole life. People love how chill you are. You're the friend that everyone leans on. And you're so good with your kids. You're the unicorn. And underneath it all, you're exhausted in a way that you could never sleep through. Like, sleep is not the answer here because you've spent your entire life being whoever everyone else needs you to be. Fawn is the masterpiece of good girl conditioning. It's been called kindness. It's been called being agreeable. It's been called being mature. It is, in fact, a survival response. Your nervous system learned to be agreeable to keep you safe, to keep you feeling loved, to keep you feeling chosen. So you got really good at it, and it cost you yourself. For me, all of these patterns were so ingrained in who I was, who I thought I needed to be, that if I didn't keep them, I thought I would be abandoned or seen as unworthy or never enough. So even though I knew that this caused my body to suffer, I did it anyways because I was so afraid of the alternative until I wasn't. And I feel like a lot of women can see themselves in that. So what's something that's been called your kindness or your easygoing nature that now you're recognizing is maybe a fawn response? When I look back, I can't help but think about how I held so many of these responses as identity for so long that I almost didn't even realize there was another way. But something in me just knew that we weren't meant to live life in a stress response state. So I needed to figure out how to get out of it. And when I finally said, let's pick a pattern and just work on one at a time, I honestly started with my top saboteur. We all know I love a good saboteur assessment. As I've mentioned before, I do it about every 3 months or so. It's like a quarterly thing, like taxes. And what was showing up most was people pleaser. And I began to notice my behavior, noticing how it was affecting my body, and then taking one small step at a time that made me feel lighter and more calm and more at peace. This looked like a simple thing of like rubbing my fingers together and rubbing them so consciously slow that I could feel the ridges of my fingertip. This looked like listening for the furthest away sound and the closest sound and just being with that and closing my eyes and just listening. And I wasn't looking to fix everything at once. I just focused on one behavior, and this made changing other behaviors become easier because my body got to see that I was slowly beginning to respond from a more regulated state, that I was safe, that no one was leaving, that if something needed to be released, I was able to do so knowing that that thing really wasn't meant for me anymore. So I want you to do something for me right now. I want you to take a deep breath and just notice which of these makes your body do something. When you're overwhelmed, do you get sharp, irritable, and critical, even with the people that you love? This is fight. When life feels heavy, do you go numb? Do you scroll, zone out, lose hours you can't account for, sit on the couch and just not move? That's a freeze. When tension shows up, do you immediately try to soften it, to fix it, take it on so nobody else has to feel this tension in the air? That's fawn. So considering those 3 scenarios, which one made your body flinch? Which one made you think, oh God, that's me? And which one made you want to argue with me? That's your default. That's the one your nervous system has been running for years. And if you recognized yourself in more than one, that's completely normal. Most of us live in more than one. Mine has been all 4 of these at some point in my life. So if you're listening and you recognize yourself in one or more of these, I want you to know that the Confess method supports you through this work, because being aware is only the beginning. Awareness is not the work. Knowing your default doesn't change it. Practicing a new response does. The Confess method walks you through the full O for overload section, so you can not only identify your patterns, but also begin the somatic work of coming home to your own body. This is the work that took me 5 years to figure out. I systemized it so you don't have to. Link to the PDF is in the show notes. So let's get into today's card pull. We got the ring. If you're on YouTube, you can see the card. If not, hop into the show notes and you can find the card and all of the card details. Next week, we are continuing our conversation on overload with special guest expert Kelly Brock, who is actually my own personal coach and an absolute genius on nervous system work. So be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. And if you want to follow along as we dive deeper into the Confess method, again, the link for the PDF is in the show notes. And remember, we do not confess to be forgiven. We confess to be free. Till next time.